Okay. So the other two things that uh, I thought is important that we're going to talk about today, other than the setting the scale of the project, is certain criteria about this project. And the certain criteria about this project is that there are certain planning criterias for an auditorium or a building that has a performance center, something like that. And the other is that the importance of the building in how it is resolved. Okay, so the sections and how they're important. So we'll come to that. I won't talk all of it at the start. I'll share my screen and we'll start off. Oh, why am I going desktop and okay. Okay. Can you see the screen? Can you see
I
my
think,
screen?
Yes, yes.
I think all the students must take notes. Okay, it's not like so that you can always refer to it, and by taking notes, you concentrate on what's going on and what's happening. So it'll automatically get registered in your head. So please keep a book, book several books for various subjects so that you can take notes. I know this online format can be quite distracting with lots of things happening around, and you can easily fall asleep also. So please take notes uh, under different subject heads, etc., etc. It'll just help you. Please understand that you're at the end of this term. I think Meenal and George must have already told you that you have a university exam with a viva. So whatever is told once, and even if you miss it out, it's not going to be repeated again. It's assumed that you know about it, and even in your sixth semester, there'll be questions about what's taught in your first year and second year and third year. So please be sharp about this. Don't mess around. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Okay. So, yeah, I think what he said, I think we spoke about this yesterday about, yeah, but good you reminded. And so and I think because the captions are not there, it may be necessary that you pick up on the words and at least jot them down if there is something that interests you and if you want to follow up. So the first of the examples or the first of what comes to my mind immediately when I talk about a project or the scale of the project that I am talking about is Prithvi Theatre in Jew. I do not know how many of y'all, when y'all did visit college, had the opportunity to visit Prithvi. Prithvi is just 10 minutes away, walking distance from our college. But the kind of scale Prithvi has, yeah, that it sits in that kind of neighborhood, which actually comprises of, I hope you gather that Jew initially started off with a bungalow scheme, yeah. And other than the hotel, the five-star hotel that is there along the corner, that is there, most of Jew plots, or it is a planned scheme. Jew in that sense is a town planning scheme that comprises of smaller plots, and that were let off. And but naturally we all know the who's and who of Bollywood actually stayed for a very, very long time in Jew, do stay today also. It has been the problems of flooding in Jew to a very large extent that led most people to convert their bungalows or give out their bungalows to developers to make these kind of buildings or towers that we are seeing now that are coming in and around college. Okay, so Jew has transformed extensively in this last 2 decades. But if you look back at what Prithvi Theatre, that Shashi Kapoor took the initiative and the entire family, if you look at it, it's like a small, it's like it's something meant for the neighborhood. It's not something that sits dynamically or something very monumental in the it sits on a small plot, and it is and it is in and it creates a corner for its entrance. Okay, and most important of all, as we all know, it has some structural members that wrap around the building. It has a good height. most important is I do not know if you ever gone for the show inside. The interiors are equally, so to say, interiors are equally subtle as well as low scale and offer a lot of opportunity for what is called as an experimental theater. Okay, so but more important to that to the right. To the right of the theater, if you see, is this very vibrant cafe that works, vibrant cafe and bookstall that works very well for the neighborhood. Yeah, the Irish coffee is well known. People sit there and spend hours together, and that's what makes the buildings so you, that's that can get you to relate to the building if you're in the Jew neighborhood in some sense. Yeah. So if you look at the interiors in that sense, yeah, it's not a very dominating scale. The interiors are, it's, if you look at its planning, it is largely spoken about that it's an experimental type of theater whereby you're sitting so close to the actors or performers that you can actually be in sync with what's going on. You can actually be part of, in some sense, actually be part of the action that is going around. But that's the way it is thought about. It has opportunities for seats to collapse, ramps to be added on. Um, it has the great opportunity for actors, performers to be actually come and mingle around with the so to say audience and things like that. And that is very important when you do make a performance space for your neighborhood, because what happens is that when you do something like that for your neighborhood, usually the events that are going to take place are by people who are known in your neighborhood. Okay, and you don't need to set that kind of barrier between you and the very high stage where he's performing. And because you never know, he may be your next door uncle who has developed who is a good singer or is into recital, or these lockdowns have in some sense got the best out of people because people have got time. And people, he may be just your next door uncle, and you don't need, and you can afford to sit in close proximity and listen to him, yeah, because you have interest and similar things like that. So this center that we are thinking of, or this performance space that we are thinking of, in some sense is to help local very local talents to come out and become part of the so to say locality, and become part of the, and be able to, yeah, because finally what has we've seen is that finally human relationships and the kind of and what we develop for ourselves by way of yeah, is all that matters in some sense. So all opportunities that people get, yeah, um, during their early stages in life is something that can help people to go ahead and identify their talents, and perhaps, who knows, can help them go ahead. So I thought Prithvi is a fine example, yeah, and this is how, yeah, how vibrant it gets. It's in some sense, if you, in technical matters, it's just the side open space of the auditorium, yeah, in some sense. Okay, but what I'm trying to indicate through this is that the building in an urban setting should not be looked at as a building that is set with just side open spaces. Instead, its open spaces can actually contribute to activity and character of the activity and character of the. Mumbai has its share of auditoriums. This is a larger auditorium sitting in the Nariman Point precinct. Okay, it's known as YB Chavan. Okay, it has its. I do not know if I've ever been there. It has its own scale, sitting in the high rises that is there, and it has its own, and it has a very different kind of a character. Yeah, Nariman Point is this glitzy in some sense. I wouldn't say glitzy exactly, but commercial, so to say, town of the city. And so this sits with this very large uh, very large heighted entrance pavilion and a glass facade that is not of great interest to us by way of architecture, because I'm going to be soon covering the kind of language that these buildings could work with, or you could work with, and the kind of identities that you can set for your neighborhood. Yeah. On the other hand, NCPA, not far from, again in the Nariman Point district, yeah, the NCPA is a huge complex of an auditorium comprising of 4 to 5 auditoriums, including something that is called as the Little Theatre that you actually see here. Yeah, but the building is stepped down, yeah, as the terrain steps down towards the rear, which actually abuts the coastline. Yeah, the building actually steps down, yeah, thereby breaking the entire scale of the building. The complex is a huge one, with huge auditorium blocks that are there. But the architects, Patel Batliwala, okay, have actually scaled the initial foyers and the actual entrance to the auditorium in such a way with very bold with very bold and modernist features, yeah, of um uh, uh, of both mix of exposed exposed brickworks and places, exposed concrete, and a kind of identity that has now remained with Bombay over the last 3 decades. Yeah. But um, when you talk about auditoriums, or when you talk about such cultural centers in public spaces, one cannot afford to miss out a building that has always been, for my generation, for all our generation, like Inslee's here. Inslee's been in Ahmedabad and studied for them. Premabai Hall in what's this chowk called, Inslee?
Manik Chowk. Manik
Manik
Chowk
Chowk
is
or
further.
Badra Chowk? Badra
Badra Square.
Badra
Badra
Square.
Square.
Yeah, Badra Square, Manik
The
Chowk. And if I'm
students
not,
have seen this. We went to the first year,
yeah, and if
study
I'm
trip
not
with
mistaken, there is
Ahmedabad.
Teen Darwaza very close by.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this building, designed by Doshi in his initial stages of his career as a modernist, very distinct modernist building of stripped windows, yeah, and kind of concrete brutalism. Yeah, it's a it's a true modernist building that sits in the midst of a public plaza. In that sense, I think Badra Chowk, as compared to this photograph, which I had, has changed extensively, because I think Doshi's office, Vastuship Foundation and Doshi's office have worked extensively in now reorganizing Badra Chowk, because don't forget, opposite it is the Badra temple and the fort, old part of the fort. So it's a very important square. Historically, it has been a very important square. Yeah. And you can see, I do not know if Doshi in today's day and time would have been asked that if in today's day, if he would have got the project to design this hall in such a historic setting, would he have designed similarly? Yeah, it would actually be very interesting to know that. But bottom line, that Premabai Hall and its presence, okay, and it is not very monumental, yet it has its presence felt and contributes to the identity of Badra Chowk in most sense. Yeah, it has these large blank walls all flanked on its sides, in some sense very discreet openings, and the best part is how such how a bold building in some sense has merged in the historic context is something to be looked at. Yeah, the interiors are equally bold. Yeah, if you look at the seating arrangement to the left, that you see, that is the balcony area that is there. If you see to the left, usually you see this cross section in most auditorias that you go. It has a small cantilever and has this tucked in space, usually, taken care, that happens as part of the foyer. And then there are these double heighted lobbies that, allow you to take a breath, and this long strip window allows you to look across and things like that. What I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to see what kind of scale that is set. Yeah, Doshi has done other buildings in his earlier times. The very well-known Tagore Hall. If you've been to Ahmedabad, I'm sure you did have a look at this. This also sits in Paldi, but its scale is comparatively not that of the neighborhood scale. This building sits in the midst of bigger institutional buildings, like the buildings designed by Corbusier just opposite. Yeah, NID across the street, the very vibrant Paldi neighborhood, which comprises largely of neighborhoods and then elite households and along its periphery. So we're not going that. Okay, but this early 70s and 80s had their, and Delhi, this is Delhi's Sri Ram Art Center. Yeah, Delhi, most of this our early in the early 70s, in the 70s and 80s, most of our cities got their um, share of these cultural spaces, or this kind of buildings that were modernist in nature. Okay, and this is another modern and brutalist building designed by the Shivdat Prasad, yeah, as Sri Ram Center. If you can look at look at the kind of stark forms, punctuating cylinders, yeah, it's and yeah, and how the auditorium is, and how the forms are juxtaposed with each other to get a very, very bold building that sits in that neighborhood. Yeah, and if you look here, I thought particularly to show you this plan where there is a auditoria that sits in a circle with a stage, and how you see its fire escapes are designed with there is a small section on top. I do not know if you can note that, but yeah, but very vibrant building. Usually we do not see planning of auditorias in like this, whereby the form itself takes, we'll come to that. Yeah, but this is a building to be looked at for in a manner in how the forms and how the function and the forms come together to give the entire identity to the building. Yeah, I thought of and there have been large number of brutalist, modernist buildings that have been there. Alan Stein has added the India Center at Lodi Gardens. Yeah, so all our great masters, yeah, Reval, Doshi, Korea, yeah, all of these earlier, they were practitioners of modernist buildings, yeah, and they did contribute that. I'm not stressing a lot on the kind of modernist building because these buildings actually spoke of the 60s and the 70s. However, in order to get the scale right, I did find this St. Giles Cultural Center. Okay, and it's again a modernist building. But what interests me is the scale and how it sits in the neighborhood. If you look at the building, yeah, if you look at the building is a thin, linear building, yeah, with a small seater auditorium at its rear, yeah, and it has a plane levels. So auditorias are building, that is exactly why we've taken this kind of a function, is because half the building goes below the ground, the basement is equally important. Yeah, so learning about basements and rafts, and basements are important because some of its services, entry points, so to say, maybe part of the auditorium, maybe part of the stage, all these areas go below the ground also. Yeah, if they go below the ground, you are able to also work with the height of the building, so you're able to set the scale of the building. Yeah, don't forget how you'd look at this and you wouldn't understand that this is a huge auditorium block that is overpowering. No, this looks like a building, yeah, that all can access. Yeah, it's a buildings whose scale has been very so to say, very carefully worked out. Yeah, to work for the neighborhood. I do gather that most of our students are in places that cannot afford to have large sprawling buildings and loud buildings because they are small two-tier towns. Yeah, and if you're in a two-tier town, perhaps you may have to get the scale of the building, yeah, so that it just doesn't overpower everything that is there in its vicinity. Though we seeing malls coming up in all our neighborhoods, and they just take everything away. Okay, and not to forget that they don't have any great architectural character or identity, but whatsoever. Yeah, I thought this is a fine example that spoke about how a large volume could be tucked into the ground and yet it worked well. Yeah, so it has a very vibrant, it has a, other than the auditorium at the back, in the front, the lobby area is very, very vibrant. It has this very stark ramp. It has an office block. It has a small office block for the locality. That is number two. Yeah, what we are seeing as number two is a small office block that sits there. And what you're seeing as four is a foyer that with a large concrete ramp that actually takes you up, and a bridge that connects on the other side, and then and the roofing system. Yeah, interesting, very interesting roofing system that allows the light to come in. Yeah, so that's the kind of, I'm showing this particularly one for the scale, the other is for the use, very distinct understanding and use of material and structural system. Yeah, we worked last year with a technology for a technology studio, and we did gather that students, it comes very naturally to students when they say that they want to use rough concrete, they do not want to plaster their surfaces, they'd like to work with form finish concrete, what that's called. Yeah, if you're noting down, form finish concrete. And we've had a legacy of form finish concrete, thankfully, because of Corbusier, who came in, and then, but naturally you saw Premabai Hall. Premabai Hall is entirely form finish concrete. Yeah, so even the Sri Ram Center, and then they got the identity of brutalist architecture because of the kind of character those buildings presented. They didn't have any color. They didn't have any kind of softening things to. They didn't have things to soften the building in any sense. They presented the building in the raw sense that they were actually constructed in. Yeah, and this is one fine example of how you'd see a building in form finish concrete. Yeah, and the kind of roofing systems that is there. Yeah, you can see the kind of beams and the kind of openings that is allowing the light to come in this double heighted lobby. And the office block tucked over the entrance overlooking the main street, along with the bridge that connects it. So to the left is this bridge that's connecting from the um, auditorium foyer, or the balcony entrance to the, so the ramp takes you up and then you go across the bridge, and there is an office that sits there. I think if you all are dealing with cultural centers for your neighborhood, it would be nice where people would be there, where someone could where you could go gather what's the kind of programs, information, someone who's like a coordinator. I think these things do help. Yeah, and that's the kind of seating arrangement. It's a small place. Yeah, uh, yeah, but very formally done. Look at the roofing reflectors and the side acoustic treatment that is there. Yeah, but 80s, yeah, the 80s changed things in India. Yeah, and our all our masters, yeah, they thought that they need to address architecture more relevant to India. This is very important for you to understand. I thought I should cover this. From being modernist, which was a global pattern, which was a global movement, they thought of being regionalist. Okay, they thought that their buildings can afford to be modern. Yeah, but their buildings can also afford to address the regional, so to say, nuances of the place. Okay, so there are, under the understanding of regionalism, there is something called as abstract regionalism and vernacular or or material regionalism. Material regionalism is where the building gets its identity largely from the kind of material and the kind of technologies that are put to use, especially in vernacular scenarios. We are not looking at vernacular buildings. We are looking at buildings sitting in our urban cities. So I'm not largely, last year we did speak we were working in Almora, and that's why it became necessary that we spoke about vernacular regionalism. But today, I think it's more important that we speak about what is called as abstract regionalism. Here's Korea's British Council Library. Yeah, it's not a culture, it's not an auditorium, and it's not a cultural center meant for the people. It's actually it sits in New Delhi. It's a building that is for the British Council as an institution. It's an institution building, but the idea of learning under the banyan tree, yeah, that's the Indian idea. The Indian idea that trees, yeah, Gautam Buddha got enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The idea of a tree, how important it is, and how he involves Hussein, yeah, to get to create this niche and to be able to create this, get ahead into the building. The Indian idea of working with the tree, yeah. So when you have Indian ideas and modernism, when they come together, there was this great, then there was this great movement, yeah, and that got them all onto the center stage, and then all of them followed. All the great masters, be it Korea, be it Doshi, yeah, Anant Raje, all of them, then they came to the fore, yeah, and we had this great lineup of what is called as Indian relevant buildings, yeah, or what are called as regionalist buildings, and then but naturally they came to be well known for their fame because the buildings uh, could actually communicate or bring about. So Korea worked with concepts of mandala very strongly. Yeah, the 9 mandalas that we all associate ourselves with as part of astronomy. Okay, though she worked with site nuances and local stories and local identities very strongly. Yeah. So we'll this is another art center in Ahmedabad. Yeah, by Vastushilp Foundation. And if you look at it, the kind of colors, the kind of the what I like most about this building is how it allows people to walk through the building. Yeah, it is not a building that, first of all, its scale. If you look at this building, it has the relevant mass to accommodate something like what we are looking at, a performance space and things like that. So it has the mass, but it's not high, it is not very dominating. It has that subtle scale, it has those colors, and but most important of all, it allows you to walk through the building. So if you look at the courtyards, if you look at the if you look at as you walk through the courtyard are these overlooking balconies, framed views, yeah, steps that allow you to sit all across the building, yeah, and yeah, from the road, yeah, from the road, it's a building that that is that in this sense, it's Ahmedabad is well known for its red brick, yeah, as you know, red brick construction, yeah, a hot and arid region and dry climate, yeah, and the architect has gone about creating minimal openings, yeah. Most of our performance buildings have minimal openings because it's in some sense, in that sense, it's an introvert building because all the functions do not require light from outside. Here too, if you see, there are minimal openings, and yeah, and that's how it responds. Yeah, so it's a building that lights up in the evening, allows people to be around, yeah, have events if necessary. Yeah, so just imagine if you have an event, it's you don't expect people to go after an event back home. Yeah, there would be some drinks, or there would be snacks served either at the start of the program, at the end of the program. It may be a no, and let me tell you, a performance, this performance space that we are seeing is not about was something that we are thinking about ticketing of Sangeet programs for weddings. Yeah, if I'm sure everybody has, you all are more Indian than I am in this, some sense. The, we have big weddings are big events, yeah, and our Sangeet programs require places where family members perform, and yeah, just imagine a building in your neighborhood that is like that, very prominent, yeah, gets the neighborhood, gets sets an identity and character in the neighborhood, and allows the building to be accommodated. Yeah, it's like having one of your wedding halls, yeah, and yet it can allow people to it can be rented out for an event or Sangeet program or an event or a wedding or something like that. Yeah. And the building in how it can be both placed in the plot as well as how the plot is used. Like here, there is this small amphitheater and a lily pond. Yeah. How all of that works. This is the kind of scale we are expecting you to work with. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, I may be as I go ahead, I may be showing larger auditoriums, talking on other concepts that go in auditorium planning. But important is this initial part of the talk is all about setting the scale right. Yeah, this is another building. Yeah, with distinct use of with distinct use of materials that that can clearly portray material regionalism that is there. I think there's not much. Here is another important building called Ruby City Center Hall. Okay, it's a stark building. It's again a city center hall that allows public gatherings and yeah, you can see how it's in some sense it's a corner building for a neighborhood. Yeah, the entire neighborhood is in red brick. Yeah, and the architect chooses a material color. Yeah, that allows it to merge with the city setting. Yeah, so he uses like very similar kind of material we use in our red granites or red dholpur. Yeah, like Agra, most of Agra stone is red dholpur that looks like that, and a very distinct build form. Yeah, the kind of angles, the kind of yeah, and yet the building is lifted up, allows free flow through the building. It's a linear building in some sense. Yeah, the scale of the building, the kind of openings that are there, the kind of detailing, the sharp edges in some sense bring character and identity to the neighborhood that you'd be working with. Material regionalism, yeah, material regionalism by this architect Daniel Malhau, yeah, in works with so material regionalism brings about character to the building largely for the material that it uses. Yeah, this is a more introvert building in some sense. Yeah, with the local stone that is used to clad the entire building. Yeah, if you I thought this building was interesting considering the way he represented or sketched the or understood the building in its section and its three-dimensional understanding. Again, a large part of this building is tucked below the ground. If you look at all the activities that are taking place below the ground, yeah, but it has a scale that is much more than that is expected for a neighborhood. Yeah, so it has a large scale. Okay. Okay, yeah, another building. So here we've seen how Raje contributes to IIM's Louis Khan's uh, so IIM designed by Louis Khan, and then the attempt to have an auditorium block added into the complex by Anant Raje is a fine example of how this this idea of the idea of brick, the arch, the postmodernist that is there. So here is what we call as postmodernism in some sense. Yeah, when we use when we use classical ideas like that of the buttress and the arch very distinctly. Yeah, and then again material regionalism if you'd want to work with local materials if that is there to create. Yeah, so this is again a building in its neighborhood. Yeah, this is not a very loud building, not very monumental building. It's a building that sits on the corner. Yeah, with distinct openings created and a large postmodernist identity created in. Yeah, and if you can look at it, the kind of clarity that is there in the use of the concrete abutments. Yeah, that is there, the concrete abutments again form finished concrete. Yeah, and the brick arch in some sense. Yeah, that most of America has seen, especially in the early modernist era that is there. We've seen such work earlier by yeah and during the Frank Lloyd Wright era too. Okay, by Louis Sullivan and all that when he created those large shopping centers. Bottom line, this is a postmodernist building. Mario Botta and set of architects work with this identity, and if this is what interests you, then you should look at the works of Mario Bottas closely for postmodernist kind of identities that can be set for the neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah, a scale set for the neighborhood, but new identities created through postmodernism. We come to contemporary times, and in contemporary times, I cannot but miss out the Alias franchise building in Delhi by Stephen Doffier, um, in the Lodi Gardens. Thankfully, a couple of years back, myself and Ainsley were there with a group of students. That time too, we were looking at performance spaces, all kinds of performance spaces, and we had got the opportunity to visit this very, very vibrant building. Yeah, it's in vibrant building, but very scaled to the neighborhood of the Lodi Gardens. Yeah, it's contemporary in it's very contemporary in the use of its material. Again, form finish concrete, strip windows, and this big roof allowing the allowing to keep the trying to keep the building in shade and trying to keep out the Delhi heat in some sense. Yeah. Um, uh, yeah. Very modest auditorium in its entire complex. In the entire complex, building is comparatively large. Yeah, if you look at it, and the building beautifully lights up in the evening. Yeah, with these big bold abutments, so these wall abutments, and then the building lights up towards thereby, yeah, reflecting the light from the roofing system that is there. Yeah. Another building here in the Lebrez neighborhood center, yeah, this is the kind of scale that I'd like to show you. The kind of scale. Here the slope of the auditorium, yeah, the entire slope very distinctly from the profile of the building. Can you know how the auditorium sits? And you can clearly gather that it's not a large building. The seating is not large, but the profile of the auditorium. Most of the time, the profile, most architects try hard, and that is what I'm coming to next, is that uh, how do you work with the planning of the building? Here particularly the architect takes the profile of the auditorium in its section and uses it and sets back and uses this space in between. So it's a step up. It's a building that you step up. If you look from the right, if you can see my cursor right from the left, it walks up, gets you up to enter into the stomach of the auditorium in some sense. Yeah. Yeah. And the seats go up. I do not know if you ever entered an auditorium in the center of the auditorium where the seats are all around you. And then you either go down to the seats or you go up to the seats. This is that kind of auditorium that is there. But the profile of the auditorium contributes to the entire identity of the building. Yeah. And that's what yeah, that's the kind of building that sits. You can see the girders that actually help in spanning the cantilevering the building from the central core. A very fine building. Yeah. Yeah. The Lebrez neighborhood center. Yeah. By Fraser Associates. I like the building, considering most of us try actually to hide the profile of the Audi block. Here he has brought it to the fore and it contributes to the identity of the neighborhood. Yeah, a very distinct, it stands out. Yeah, and that's how he's attempted. I'm showing some of these drawings because our working drawing sections and elevations look very different from those that are attempted for design. In design, we tend to subdue some things, and we try to we try hard to work on some. We try hard to accentuate or focus on some things. Here, if you see, yeah, if you see very clearly, here it's not so. Yeah, here working drawing sections and elevations look technically right. Technically, they are well drawn. All aspects of the detail are drawn, and nothing is stressed upon or hidden in some sense. Yeah, you don't have trees, and you don't have people, and you don't have skylines and birds. All of that. the sections and elevations for working drawing come in their come with all the details that is there, such that the contractor executes it without any flaw. Yeah. So that's the building that I thought was important to set the scale right. Oh, so get the thing. Now I'm coming to the next topic that is there, that an auditorium block usually, yeah, usually an auditorium block comprises of this wedge-shaped block in plan, yeah, and the block can and in section, and it typically looks something like this in section with its step down, maybe a projection room at the top, the stage area and things like that. This is a typical plan, and this could be a typical cross section. What I'm trying to say is that most of the time, this part of the plan, other than the last project that we saw, yeah, where the profile of this auditorium is accentuated and made as an identity to the building, most of the time we get the opportunity that we can build around the auditorium. What I'm trying to say is that this kind of project usually has something called as the core and something called as the shell. Yeah, an auditorium block need not be clearly identified from the outside that it has an audi block in it, and the scale of it need not be so dominant that it can take the scale of the neighborhood away. And how's that? Usually the audi block can afford to sit in the center as a core, and there could be peripheral areas like fire escape, staircases, toilets, passageways, movement areas, services, AHU rooms, all kinds of things usually happen in and around the auditorium block, because the auditorium is a largely serviced building with all kinds of attention to be paid for fire escape and things like that. So the Audi block, if you look at this, that's the Audi block. Yeah, so here's a rectangular auditorium block. I'm sure Meenal, through her lectures in acoustic, will talk about various type of auditorium designs or various type of auditorium layouts. What I tried to make understand that this kind of identity that I spoke to you about, yeah, like this kind of identity that I spoke to you about, be it postmodernism, be it modernist, be it regional vernacularist, or be it abstract regionalist or vernacular, the identity to the building can actually come out from the shell that you design. The core of the building in its plan can be as functional as you'd want, whether it's a rectangular auditorium design, wedged auditorium design. Yeah, yeah, like like this particular building, yeah, is a rectangular auditorium but sits in the circle. So the shell is the circle, the core is a rectangle. Yeah, auditoriums can be this. So depending upon your plot, yeah, and depending upon the kind of buildings that I've shown you earlier, then the kind of identities you'd like to set for your neighborhood, your core and your shell can afford to be different. Your core can be very functional, but your shell can be very can vary according to your ideas to contribute, yeah, to contribute to the kind of identity you'd like to set for the neighborhood. So look at this particular form of the plan of the building and the kind of shell that it takes form of. This is more wedge shape, yeah, going in line with the auditorium layout, yeah, but the shell is yet a different part of the building other than the core of the auditorium. Look at this. So I'm just showing you a set of random plans. Yeah. And let me tell you, if you go on the net and plan 30 well-known auditorium plans, or, well-known auditorium cross sections, Arch Daily and Architizer, all these websites have a compilation, huge compilation. That's exactly from where I got huge compilations of well-known auditoriums across the world, whose planning understanding, whose sectional understanding has been something really worth looking up to. And you have that time, you have these 2 weeks to look at these and get inspired from and make good use from it. Here is a rectangular auditorium in its core. But if you look at how the offsetted shell is taken up, and the shell can then lend character to your neighborhood in whatever ideology that it may be it contemporary, be it modernist, yeah, be it regionalist, be it postmodernist, yeah. be it high tech. I'll be showing you a couple of high tech buildings. Yeah, look at this. The central, the central rectangular auditorium as compared to the shell. Yeah. So the shell is something very, this building reminds me of the Ruby City Center Hall that I showed you, the red building that I just showed you. It had all these exaggerated corners. Yeah. And this plan could have very well been something of that sort. Yeah, where the core of the plan is rectangular, and you look at the two sheer walls that run along the sides of the auditorium. Yeah, and in some sense looks to have completely supported the rest of the shell. Yeah, look at the two dark lines that run parallelly, that actually are the side walls of the auditorium. And let me tell you, when in construction, when we talk about auditorium design and roofing systems for such large span buildings, the walls become the how the walls behave is all important. Yeah, how the walls behave is all important. And then we come to so auditoriums are not only about plans, but the plans have a very distinct identity of core and shell. But the auditorium building in that sense is an entire building to be looked at for its cross section. Yeah. So the cross section of the building, and this is the building in an. So what are we looking at? If you look at, if I have to summarize our project is a tight neighborhood building, in some sense, a building that sits on a tight neighborhood plot. Yeah, but it's complex in more complex in section than in plan. We are not looking at a spread out plan. We are looking at an urban plot, a tight plot onto which you set this building. But we surely are looking at it in its complexity, in its section, right from its basement design, like you see here. Very clearly, you can see the stage has a basement below it. Yeah, it could be a revolving stage. It could be a stage that could sit down, get up. Yeah, all kinds of things. You can look above the stage is this huge shaft that is there. Yeah, that can allow perhaps sets to come down. Yeah, backdrops to come down. Yeah, and then but naturally above the seating area are these girders. Yeah, you can see here all these are girders, and these girders allow air conditioning systems, catwalks. Yeah, acoustical panels. A lot of activities can happen here. I'll show you a couple of, and then but naturally the seating that is there. This seems to be a larger auditorium. Now the auditoriums that you see here may be more larger, but they are shown to you for their sectional complexity. Yeah. So here is another building with girder systems on the top to be able to take care of its flat roof in some sense. Yeah. But again, if you look at this, you can see something where we could call as an orchestra pit in some sense. Yeah. These are auditoriums that are, yeah. And then how the seating sits and the kind of how you take care of the spaces below the angular areas. Yeah. Again, girders. Yeah, you can look at how the girder is used to take care of the balcony areas, as well as how the girders are used to take care of the roofing systems and help you get a catwalk and help suspend the acoustical panels. So this building is all about sections. Finally, once the design is resolved, your building is going to be looked at as cross sections and nothing more. And the project is going to end with cross sections, elevations and cross sections, and nothing more than that. Here is a building where there is a girders on the top of the auditorium and an entire floor, yeah, which is not very advisable but very well known. Yeah, there are entire hotels like the Rang Sharda Hotel in Bandra. Yeah, works like that. On top of the auditorium block is an entire hotel that is planned. Yeah, there is this floor. So there is this entire usable floor on top of the auditorium, but naturally the girders spanning across the auditorium at the top are heavy duty. Look at the road level and look at how much of the building is actually going underground. Yeah, this building is all about that. This building is knowing up. This project is all about knowing how well you can tuck in your building. That's the word. Tuck in your building below the ground. Yeah. Yeah. Look at another example of a usable space above an auditorium. Yeah. with heavy duty beams that run across, yeah, that allow you to suspend the flooring system. So there's a big void there to accommodate the auditorium, and then but naturally you top it all up with a floor that brings the block, yeah, to the desired effect that you want as a project. That's all in your hands. Yeah, staggered roofs, all kinds of staggered roofing systems, folded plate, staggered roof. When I looked at this, it reminded me of Tagore Hall. I do not know if you ever visited Tagore Hall. Very good example of core and shell. This is the core of the auditorium. Look at it.
They have visited Tagore Hall.
Very nice. This is the core of the auditorium. That's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. That the auditorium can have a complete and Doshi has used the idea of the folded plate. Yeah, the folded plate structural system, both in its and from the outside, it doesn't appeal much, but it works wonderfully well. These folds work wonderfully well in order to create the shell, and it's a portal come folded plate. Yeah, so you can, what you see here is portals that are actually coming down, and from the portal are folded plates that are actually helping in creating the entire shell or the cover to the building, whereas the interior core sits completely, has nothing to do with the shell, complete isolation. Yeah, so that's important in your auditor. You have to take a call. Do you want your Audi block like Lebres Center that I did show to create the identity of the building, or do you want the core to be hidden with this shell? Should you want the core hidden by the shell? Then there are numerous examples that are there. And there are equally good examples of how the interior core itself can lend identity to the building. Yeah, all kinds of roofing systems that lend character to the building. Don't forget, this is one homogeneous building in some sense. Not everybody may make the building walkable with internal courtyards and all that. But yeah, these are the forms of the buildings that is there. Look at this building. Yeah, again, a very small auditorium. Yeah, this goes with the high tech idea. Yeah, this goes by looking at this building. If you look at this building, this can be this reminds me of Renzo Piano and Richard Rogers Pompidou Center, or the Lloyd's building. Yeah, where where all the ducting system takes precedence. The entire ducting system takes precedence over the character of the building. Yeah, that's your Audi block in some sense. Look at this in section. That's your Audi block with these metal support systems. Someone needs to mute their mic. And look at these ducting systems that are there. Heat and cold ducting systems. Yeah, heat and cold ducting systems. Can someone please mute their mic? And yeah, that's how the auditorium sits above the ground, and that's the kind of high tech kind of this was called high tech in the 80s, when people building designed buildings like that, when their services were exposed. I'm sure all of you have heard of Pompidou Center, yeah, where the big ducting systems and the shafts are visible for all to see. A bit better revised version was the Richard Rogers Lloyd Center, again in London. Yeah, but that's yeah. This is by Christian Richards, Louis Ferreira Center. Yeah, that yeah, that creates a new identity. Look at this. Look at this building. Yeah, sits above the ground. And this is something that this is the kind of, yeah, the auditorium block sits above the ground and opens the ground for a public plaza. Yeah, I'm sharing ideas in some sense. Yeah, I think that in the first class, if you can share ideas, it can help you start off well. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, building sitting above the ground, opening the plaza onto the floor. Yeah, look at this cross section. a, a stacked cross section of an auditorium, a stacked cross section of the auditorium. That's the core. And look what happens along the shell. Yeah. God save me if you'll start designing like this. Yeah. But yeah, but that's how it is done. Yeah. That's the stacked auditorium. It's a linear stacked auditorium with with a lot of space for events, or more like a show that uses the height to using its height to create events, and that's the kind of building that is there. Now I gather most people are in two-tier cities. Yeah, and when you work in two-tier cities, you do not have that kind of scale to, you may want to work with a scale that actually is very modest to the kind of neighborhood that is there. Look at this building. Yeah, this is an auditorium. Yeah, that sits with a sloping roof and an area that allows people to come, hang around, park. Yeah, that's the kind of a that's the kind of forecourt that it looks more like an addition. Yeah, but it works for the auditorium. It works for the auditorium. This is the most simplest of kind of cross sections that I've seen. Yeah, yeah, with a foyer, with an open, with a semi covered foyer. Yeah, and that's the kind of scale. Perhaps some of this kind of scale may be helpful to look at your neighborhoods. I wouldn't know in the kind of neighborhood you're looking at. And the last of these projects is again buildings that go well with this kind of neighborhood. Is this yeah? Is this kind of uh, the lured kind of buildings, or the buildings that go with CLT, that is reused timber. So I do not, yeah, I don't think we use it much. But the idea is that it's a nice building that wraps around, that has a courtyard in the center, a set of steps that allows the people to come to that comes to the terrace of the building, a very nice building. And then the wall wraps around to become, from the steps wraps around to become part of the courtyard. Very well resolved building with a very strong concept of how the steps rise up to become both wall and, yeah, from the floor it rises up to become the wall and then to become the courtyard. Yeah, that's the kind of plan that is there. It's a larger plan as compared to our program, because it not only has an auditorium block, it's a center, neighborhood center. So it has many more other rooms. I'm sure we can give you a leeway for some rooms that you believe that your neighborhood could have. Yeah, it could be perhaps a counseling center. It could be perhaps a gym. It could be perhaps something small. Yeah, some offices to help unemployed. Yeah, or some accounts, I think a counseling, something like that. We could add a couple of, we've kept that kind of leeway that the building can accommodate a couple of rooms. That's your central courtyard to that building. Yeah, and that's the kind of steps that is used by the youngsters. Yeah, and it's a kind of a very subtle building that sits in your neighborhood. Yeah, though it has a large layout with the courtyard inside, but in that sense this is a building that very modestly sits in that kind of neighborhood that is there. People who are working in the city, I think you may have to go a little higher, yeah, to match the urban scale that is there. And what better than working with these buildings that allow the building to breathe in our tropical climate. Yeah, we now see these very frequently used by builders, all kinds of lure systems, yeah, metal lures that allow the building not only to breathe light differently in the night, yeah, and kind of create a screened effect toward the city outside. Yeah, and the last of these projects is what is called as a culture forest. Yeah, again in an urban setup. Yeah, it's the kind of building that I'm talking about, being stacked, complex in section, ground floor largely public, open for public interface. And as you go up, you have all these kind of skins and landscapes and skins and things like that. Yeah, and that and accommodates an Audi block in the middle of the building. Yeah, that looks something like that. It's a proposal. It's a proposal. What I'm trying to say is that you can have very strong concepts like this is a sustainable, the idea of a sustainable and green building sitting in the neighborhood. Yeah, if you're looking at something like that, yeah, like where the building responds to the climate, it creates its own food, it creates its own landscape, and then how you stagger it, create pockets. Yeah, it's called as culture forest. Yeah, it's literally like a cultural center in the middle of the city. It's more scaled for the city, and I thought I should end the project with this. Yeah. Before I end, I I thought before I end, I'll take another 3 to 5 minutes of your time, and I'll show a project. Where did that go? Please give me a minute. I would like to show a project that is not about that is all about flexibility. Yeah, I would like to show you a project that is all about flexibility, and let me first show you the building before I can speak more about it. I think the video itself will, and that's it. Just bear with me for a couple of minutes. Yeah, I'll just give me a minute. I'll just stop sharing and start sharing again with the audio on. Include computer sound and share my screen, and give me 3 minutes and we are done. Uh, that's the Charles and the D. Wiley Theatre. Yeah. It was one aspect of the auditorium that I thought I should bring to you, where the entire building in the interior has the opportunity to, yeah, that has the opportunity. Just a minute, just a minute, I think. So there are a couple of such videos that are available. If that interests you, please do make it a viewpoint and type Wiley, Wyly, Wiley Theatre, Charles and D. Wiley Theatre. Yeah, it is in some sense, it's a community hall that has systems that come into place to become a full-fledged auditorium of various kind of permutations and combinations. A huge number of permutations and combinations, and it's technology that is put to good use. Yeah. So if any one of you has that kind of, yeah, wants to take the technology studio to its new level of attempt, yeah, then yeah, go for it. Yeah, there is another very well-known building that again is the Shed in New York. Yeah, it's again an auditorium building that expands out, moves out, gets in. So check these buildings out. Yeah, but our building, though this scale, Wiley is not of a large scale. The Shed is of a larger scale that is there. But this gives you opportunities to think that how there is no limit to your imagination and as well as your hard work. Yeah. So it all depends upon the kind of effort and attempt that you make, and we are there with you. We are a very capable lot that can help you take the project through. And it has been long. It has been more than an hour, 90 slides. I went overboard. No wonder I couldn't put them on a PPT. I'm glad I didn't do that, but but that would have helped. If I put it on a PPT, I would be keen to have written all captions and things like that. I hope the recording is there for you to look back if there is something that you would have, but more important, I'm open to taking any questions if there are any. So I hope if I have to summarize, all I have to say that if I have to summarize, I have to say that the presentation was about three things. Yeah, I didn't want to say this at the start. I'm saying the first thing is about the scale of the project. Yeah, please don't get carried away that it's some big monumental auditorium we want you to build somewhere. No, it's a small neighborhood cultural center that has an auditorium inbuilt in it. Point one. Point two, that the auditorium always has, in some sense, a core and a shell to the building. The core can afford to be very functional. You can have your sight lines and all your profile of the seating area all well worked it. But the shell can actually bring the identity to your neighborhood. And it all depends upon the material, the kind of technology, yeah, the kind of character that you want to get to the building will all come in how you detail out the shell of the building. That was point two. And point three was that this building is all about its cross section. It may be a very compact building, but it can be afford to be a very layered building. So you'll have basements, some things on ground, some things on first, some things on second, right up to the third to fourth floor. So it's going to be a 3-4 storied building, though it may have it may not have 4 floors to access, but it may be a building stacked to 4 floors, very complex in its section. Yeah, very complex in its section in the way it is stacked. And we should all be now comfortable understanding these because all our multiplexes are like that. Gone our eras of single seater theaters. Single seater theaters have not worked well, especially large seaters because they don't work well. So small seater multiplexes is the need of the hour. But we are not looking at small seater multiplexes. We are looking for a place we are looking for a place where the neighborhood can be maintained by the neighborhood. People can come it, use it, enjoy, be more culturally driven, yeah, and things like that. So this presentation, this talk was all about three things: the scale, the shell and the core, and that this project is all about the section. Yeah, I'm done with. Any would like to add? Anybody please add? Faculty please add. If there are questions, I'll be more than happy to take. Yeah, yes, Shravan.
So, looking at the projects we've seen and the kind of discussions we've had, the auditorium is meant for community programs, talks, even talks like what we have in the encounters, and performances as well. But if we want to design it to be more suited to one of these activities, that's up to us, right? It doesn't have to equally cater to all. If I wanted to be more performance oriented or more community function oriented, I can design it that way, right?
Yes, Shravan, everything is left to you and your guide. It all comes down how well you convince the guide. It all also depends upon the context that you select, the kind of scale that is in and around the building that the plot that you have identified. It all comes down to that. That's why I did try to show buildings that would work in a kind of neighborhood that would not be very loaded as compared to some of us that are in the city that is very loaded. Yeah. Bottom line, it's a neighborhood insert. The scales will vary for everybody. The complexity scales may vary for someone may would like to keep it very simple. Someone would like to make it very layered and complex. That comes down to you, between you, your guide. Yeah, you're working in close coordination with a guide. Okay, and that guide should perhaps be in some position to be able to help you. But what is important is that respond to the neighborhood, respond to the context. Yeah, it may be in contrast, it may be in, you may not have a great neighborhood, you may want to create a contrast by giving something. You may already have a great neighborhood. You may just want to go along with the neighborhood, either by with the material, either with the scale, the color, whatever that is there. Bottom line, give a response that is befitting. That is my only, and understand what you're doing. Let it not be a building just come out of a trial and error. Yeah. Anybody else? You think actually this was necessary for day one?
Yeah, I showed them a variety of things, and I think as they go around, go through this whole semester, Meenal will be actually talking about the kind of core functions of the foyer area and the backstage and green rooms and all that jazz. So, I mean, this gives them an overall kind of idea of what this project's about. But I mean, since we are all together here on day one, I mean, it's clearly established what is the crux of this project. Okay, so there's no two ways about it in terms of the core functions, etc., etc. That's definitely there. But besides this, there are other aspects to this whole subject, wherein I think you'll have to just keep pace with the studio. Okay. Uh, uh, for example, there's going to be a whole bill of quantities and specifications which is going to happen simultaneously for this very building. Okay. So you'll be, because this is part of what you'll need to learn as architects, that you'll have to actually do a BOQ, which Jimmy and Neeraj will kind of introduce to you all. So you'll actually work out the quantities of the footings, the columns, the blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. So um, it's a quick kind of process. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it's you have to sit on your butt and make the drawings. Okay, you have to sit on your butt. I mean, the thing is that this studio talks about representation. Okay, and we architects use drawings as a language to represent and communicate our architectural ideas to another party. That can be a contractor, or that can be a person who is actually looking at the specifications. It can become the project manager, it can become the structural engineer, it can go to HVAC consultant. Okay, when you talk about your services for air conditioning, it can become be something for the acoustic consultant. And we architects are the conductors of this orchestra. We architects are the conductors of this orchestra. We are the guys who know every damn thing about the building. Okay, and that's the task we have. We know, we are supposed to know everything about water, everything about sewage, everything about ventilation, everything about structural engineering, everything about whatever. We are, as it gets more sophisticated and more complex, we have people to give us more information who are specialized in that. Okay, but the basic conceptual premise of the whole project is our responsibility. Okay, so right from quantities, materials, etc., etc. I mean, if you looked at the projects which Jimmy showed, um, the size of the stone is a decision the architect takes, because that has a bearing on the cost of the project. Okay, uh, so it's very important that we are familiar with all of this. So what you learned in first year, second year, third year, what you'll be learning in structures, etc., etc., all comes together in this kind of studio. Um, it is tough. It is demanding, physically demanding, where you actually have to sit for hours and hours to make accurate drawings. Um, and if you don't keep pace with it, you'll be left behind. Okay, so I'm raising the red flag right from day one that it has to be as per this. You'll have 16 weeks definitely, and we know the kind of work which is required. So there's no two ways about it, and you have to manage it. You have to manage it. You cannot say I'm doing AD and I'm doing something else and whatever. We know the thing. I mean, tomorrow when you actually get into architectural offices or you start your practice on your own, you'll be dealing with some projects which are in its design stage, some projects which are in a construction stage, some projects which are in a working drawing stage. You have to kind of know the priority you have to give for each of those projects. Okay, uh, simultaneously. So you cannot say that okay, I'm going to do my architectural design and forget about this, or I'm only going to do this and forget about that. And it's no point complaining about each of them, because you need to have the expertise. So what you're doing in architectural design is going to help you in your working drawings, architectural representation drawings. What you're doing here is also going to help you there, because one of the things which we're going to talk about is universal accessibility for everyone. And when you're talking about an auditorium, when you're talking about the raking of these seats, how does a person who is bound to a wheelchair access the auditorium? So I mean, all these things are going to come up. It's part and parcel of your learning, and it will help you in cross learning in other subjects. So you cannot say that, oh, Ainsley is my guide and Ainsley asked me for this. Hence, whoever your AD guide is, I'm working on Ainsley with Ainsley and he's very demanding. So whatever. Yeah. So be up to it. Hopefully today when we actually break into groups, we'll actually see what you'll have in terms of your site and what you'll are talking about. Yeah. So I mean, it's demanding. I mean, I don't know, like, you need to sit for 2-3 hours to actually make drawings. Okay, you can take a break to watch a video in between. You can crack a joke about any of the faculty. You're most welcome, but you need to get back to it after that joke and after that break. Don't watch a film which is 3 hours long and then say I'll take a draw, spend 5 minutes for working drawings. नहीं होने वाला है, नहीं होने वाला है. It has to be reverse. 3 hours for architectural design, 3 hours for working drawings, and automatically वो सब हो जाएगा. Because and some of y'all, if y'all are not up to it in terms of AutoCAD skills or 3D software, whatever, you may require more time. Okay, while Shravan, who is very good at AutoCAD, can actually make a plan in like 10 minutes. Okay, so don't base yourself, because Shravan might do time pass with you. Okay, and you might be yeah, Ambika, look up, he's above you only on the screen. So Shravan might do time pass with you. Okay, but he's smart enough that within 10 minutes he's got his plan. Okay, and someone else will be struggling, and to make the plan will make take about uh, half an hour or maybe 1 hour. So please don't get into group kind of things. uh, know your strength, know your weakness, and then I'm believe me, we are with you. Okay, we will help you throughout the way, but be with us. Yeah, so that's all I'd like to kind of say. Any other faculty want to add on?
I think it's very wise that you speak to your seniors to know what this subject takes. This subject is intense, as he rightly says, and takes a lot of time and effort. Okay. Sadly, till last semester we had 2 days. Now we had one long day. Do you have anything after the break on a Wednesday, or that's free? What is the timetable say on a Wednesday after
No,
the
it
lunch
doesn't.
break?
No, they don't have anything. They
They
don't have
don't have anything.
anything.
Yeah.
We usually had encounters on Wednesday, but I think that's
So it's
depending
left,
on when.
it's kept that way, such that, you know, that even if you have a working studio and if the guide tells you that I'll want to meet you, yeah, we are all full timers here. If you gather, there are no visiting faculty this time. They're all full timers. Okay, so it means that suppose I start at 10 and I give you I give you to do something and I'll say I'll see it after lunch on a Wednesday. That is possible. So you need not actually sit around all the 4 hours listening to what Jimmy has to talk to Shravan. Yeah, Jimmy, you don't have to be there for everything. You can be there, listen to a couple of so to say responses, and even keep the teams on, mic off, and start working. Yeah, because I'm sure your guides will tell you in an hour I'll expect this, resolve this and get back to me. Yeah, I'm around because he's talking to some people, some others in your group. So he'll tell you to get back and then that whole day is available. So you have to use the whole day. I just told you yesterday that myself and Neeraj would conduct this specification class and we would use the 3 hours for people to actually solve things in the class. No homework. No homework, and we would reward people big if they came up with the quantification within the class. At the start of the class, we'd say today we are solving this. This is the way to go about it. These are the thing. Everybody sits, solves it. We move around, solve anybody's problem. At the end of the class, we are with the file. Those who have solved it, we mark them a 9 and move out of the class. Those who missed it. Like that, if you use the Wednesday well, considering it's the entire day, believe me, you don't need to sit anything after that. After the Wednesday's class is over, perhaps you can sit for the Thursday's class. You may need not to, and next you have done work enough for the next Wednesday, perhaps. Yeah, or you need to sit only on the Tuesday evening. But that is if you use the entire Wednesday well. Yeah. That
But
comes
please,
down to how well you are organized. It's like sitting in an office. In an office, your boss may call you to have a discussion, but that doesn't mean that if he's discussing with you that day, the entire day you sit like that and wail away the time. No, you go back to your cabin and start working. And then he tells you, he gives you an assignment at the start of the day. Again at 4 o'clock, he'll come and say, "Is it done?" Or he'll tell you next month, sit at home.
also please understand that though we are saying that it starts in the morning and goes on whatever, y'all please be ready at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, don't come and tell us that, oh, like supposing I come for the class and then you say, oh, I will show you my work whenever I feel like. No, that won't do. Okay, y'all have to be ready. Okay, we might pick up Sejal's work or Tanai's work or Aditya's work or something. Don't say that, no, I'll show you later. That just gets us, because I mean within that class time we're available for you. Okay, I may choose to then say, I want to see you later again to help you out or whatever. So you don't tell us a time. We are not like chana wala selling chana on the beach. Okay, that you tell us baad mein aa jao. Okay, we will call you and say, okay, please, I want to see your work. Don't say, no, now I got this and I will meet you later. No, please. Okay, so understand, respect that we are the faculty. We will call you and we will say, okay, I want to see you again. I think Aditya, you are lagging behind. Please, I want to see your thing, or maybe send me the plan on WhatsApp, or I'll see you again at 4 o'clock for 10 minutes, but I want it that way. Okay, so you should be ready in the morning. Don't tell any of us that, okay, that now बाद में आ जाओ. Okay, अभी नहीं चाहिए. ठीक है? So understand that. So please be ready that Wednesday morning you should be ready. Don't say that whole day is and चलो बाद में बताएगा. Clear? Is that clear? Yeah, because very often we get this from our students. बाद में आ जाओ. ठीक है? There has to be some order and discipline so that you're ready. Yeah, and I think Meenal has already worked out. Meenal and George have already worked out the schedule of for the submissions and all that stuff. So I don't think there will be any clashes if you keep to these dates. If you change
Yeah.
anything, then
So
it has a domino effect on all the subjects. Yeah.
So I
I have
hope
already shared
everybody's
the I have already shared the schedule for the technology studio, but there is an overall schedule for all lectures and all submissions. So that also I'll be sharing you in a short while. Don't worry.
So is the project now clear to anybody, everybody? Does anybody yet have doubt about what their site should be like, what should be the size of the building, what should be the size of their plot, what it should cater to, how complex does it need to be, how simple does it need to be, what is the kind of core ideas that are there. If there is any of such things, please feel free to talk here or to your individual guides, whatever that is. I think everybody is more than capable. I particularly made this presentation so that all faculty are also on board on what we have in mind. Yeah, though we have discussed this earlier, but yet I thought that there could be a possibility that people would take some very large sites and plan some big monumental buildings. Yeah, and we don't want that. We want more small yet well layered and complex buildings. I keep repeating this. Yeah, anybody else with any queries? Anybody wants to add anything? Don't forget, a project like this would give you a fee of 330 lakhs. A project of this order would give you 30 lakhs, equivalent to 300 marks that we are going to give you. Okay. If you don't perform now, 30 lakhs to दूर की बात है, 3 लाख भी नहीं मिलेगा.
So 10 lakhs for 100 marks.
10 lakhs
That's
for
so
100.
nice.
Yeah, so this is what we discussed yesterday about the responsibility an architect has, how lightly we take it, and what is the kind of money we make as architects. And that's how our lifestyles change. And you know, some of you all may be becoming the first time professionals in your family, and it's going to change things forever. Once a professional, always a professional. If your parents are already professional, that's why you are going to be a professional, and the generations together are know the importance of being a professional and are going to do that. If you are the first professional in be happening in your family, yeah, then I should congratulate you, because after you, your family, entire generations are never going to look back, and they are also going to follow professionals, become professionals, because that's the lifestyle that you're going to set for them. They're going to learn from that, and they can't afford to make the mistake of not being a professional. Yeah. 30 lakhs will come to you only if you perform. Okay. Otherwise, you can say goodbye. So speak to your seniors. They'll tell you how intense it is. And I'm sure you're all very hardworking. Yeah, just maintain some discipline as we all spoke about. It should all go well. We are all with you. We know it is difficult, so we are all with you.
Maja aega. You'll enjoy it. I mean, after you have completed it now, you'll be happy that yes, we can do it. It's time management and discipline. You'll do it. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
part of learning it.
So when we say we are all with you means that we would want you to work, huh? So yes, that is a very strong point here. That it's not that because we are here with you, we will give you leeways, and we want you to perform so good that when the vivas happen, we get comments that your college did very well. I mean, that is what we are looking for, and that's what we expect from you guys. Yeah. So I think
So
we should break now
before
and go
making
to our
any
individual channels.
yeah, but before
Yeah. No
making
excuses
any
allowed.
excuse, yeah, before making any excuse to the faculty, think 10 times, okay, about the 30 lakhs. If money is important to you, if marks are not important, then money, okay. So I mean, you can't tell your client, "Arey, I do want those 5 lakhs today," okay. I mean, maybe you're that person who has reached nirvana or something like that, but whatever. Yeah, so
I mean,
don't
it
make
is simple, guys. Either you can have success or you can have excuses. You cannot have both.
yeah,
So keep
excuses
that
don't
point
fly.
in mind.
Clear?
And it's not that we are trying to attempt something for the first time. Huh? So don't think that, oh my, this is every year people have attempted, people have done wonderfully well. Some have not been able to make the mark. Some most of them made the mark. At the end of the 5 years, they said, third year में मजा आया. क्या काम किया था. फिर fourth year से सब ठीक है. Fourth year has a different intent. Fifth year has a different intent. It gives you space. Third year doesn't give you space. Third year keeps you on your move. It's just the pace that keeps you moving, you know. It's like the city life. तुम रेलवे स्टेशन पे खड़ा हो जाओगे तो कोई धक्का मार के जाएगा, और भाई क्या खड़ा है बीच में, चलते रहने का सोचना भी है तो चलते सोचो, खड़े रहोगे तो धक्का मिले मिले. It's that kind of pace. It's the city life pace. You have to keep moving, and in the movement itself life moves on. The fourth year, fifth year is like retired age. You can sit, think, you've made your money, yeah, come back from abroad, and then you can think, "Well, how I invest my money, can I do something that I like?" That's the fourth year and fifth year. Can I do something that I like? Not the third year. The third year, no liking, doing is the thing, is the mantra. The fourth year
Minal,
is,
Minal, you told them about all those regulations and all that,
yeah,
no?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
just remind
So
them
now they are aware.
constantly.
Yeah, no, they are aware of what happens if the fifth semester they don't perform, then the repercussions on the sixth semester in terms of time as well as in terms of passing the semester.
can
Yeah, but
we,
we'll have to keep on plotting.
it's 10 o'clock. Can we, I think we've spoken
Yeah.
2 hours, is getting bored. We want to take a break and then join back or something like that, or directly
Yeah.
join?
Yeah, I think we'll meet
We
in
take
our
a 5
groups,
minutes.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, we meet
We
in our
take a
groups.
5-10 minutes break and we join. Guys, please join the channel. We have already shared the group with you. You know which channel to join. So yeah, we take a break.
Is
Bye.
I think the channels are visible to all, no? Channels are visible to all.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
If the channel, please
Yes.
join your relevant channels. Yeah. Yeah.
After 10 minutes, no? Okay.
Yep.
ठीक
Yeah,
है.
I'm going to join after 10 minutes. So guys, take a break 10 minutes and join after 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I think even
I'll
So
they
we'll
also
will
leave
join.
require
this.
because they are
I'll
also
take
there.
have a cup of tea,
Yeah, even the kids
and
will
10,
require.
15. I'll join 10, 15. Even you can take a break 15 minutes. 10, 15. We can reconvene in our channels. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
bye-bye.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Bye.
Take
Jimmy.
care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jimmy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You will have to stop the recording.
Oh, yes.